And in this lesson, we're going to be learning about lipids. There will be two lessons for lipids. And the first lesson is just about the general structure of lipids, that they are hydrophobic molecules, meaning that they are non-polar and they don't interact with water. And then we're going to look at fatty acid structures. The big idea here is that water cannot interact with fatty acids. Okay, so this is a fatty acid chain. Now, the electrons are shared equally. So this is non-polar. Okay, and because it's non-polar, water does not form hydrogen bonds with lipids. Okay, now fatty acid changes the lipid properties. You can get saturated fats. That means that they're all in a straight line. And you can get unsaturated fats, which means that they have one of these carbons have a double bond, meaning it has a little bit of a kink in its tail. If there is a kink, it means that they can't pack as closely together, and it has a lower melting point because of that. So we have saturated. It has a higher melting point because the fatty acids can link very close to each other. And if it's unsaturated, there is some space between the fatty acids, meaning that it has a lower melting point. So it's a small structural change that affects a physical behavior. So lipids are usually non-polar. And what non-polar means is that the electrons here are shared equally with all the molecules. So there are no regions that electrons are shared unequally. So all the electrons are shared equally, meaning that it does not it does not form regions which are slightly positive or slightly or partially negative and positive, meaning that water, even though water is partially charged, it does not form hydrogen bonds with fatty acids. And that is why if you put water and lipids together, they do not mix well, because nonpolar lipids are hydrophobic, meaning they don't interact well with water. It creates a clear layer between the two. Now, lipids are hydrophobic. Hydro means water, and phobic means fear. So it's like kind of a fear of water, meaning it just basically means that it does not interact with water. It means the molecules, because the molecules they have no polar or non-polar regions, hydrogen bonds cannot form, meaning it will not be able to interact with water. Now, fatty acids are lipid subcomponents. Now, we've learned in carbohydrates that we get monomers, monomers and polymers. Now, fatty acids don't really have true monomers and true polymers. Okay, we say that they have subcomponents. Now, many fatty acids are lipids, and here is a fatty acid chain that we find. This is a phospholipid, and it has a fatty acid chain. Okay, this fatty acid chain is just a long chain of carbon and hydrogen molecules, and it can either be straight or it can be bent. And if it's bent, we say that it has a kink. Okay, so this structure helps us to determine the lipid properties. The more double bonds means it's more unsaturated. So this is saturated, meaning it has no double bonds. All of these are just one covalent bond between the carbon atoms. If it's mono unsaturated, it has one double bond. If it's poly unsaturated, it has many double bonds, two or more. Now, the structure affects the physical behavior. So the more unsaturated it is, the more liquid it is at room temperature. But why? So here we have an unsaturated fat because it has this little kink. Now, if I put these fatty acids together, there will be space between them, meaning they cannot pack together really tightly. Whereas with saturated lipids, you have no double bonds and the fatty acid chains are straight, meaning they can like really pack together tightly. There's very little space between the tails. So if there is very little space, it's tightly packed and it will be more solid at room temperature. And the more unsaturated it becomes, the looser it's packed and the lower the melting point. So basically, if you start increasing the double bonds, it becomes more and more liquid at room temperature. The lipids are non-polar, okay? So this is the fatty acid tail. This is non-polar. And because it's non-polar, it is hydrophobic, meaning it doesn't interact with water. It does not create hydrogen bonds with water. You need to know saturated means there are no double bonds, and that causes the fatty acids to be very, very tightly packed. And because it's tightly packed, it's more solid at room temperature. If it is unsaturated, you have a double bond, okay? One or more double bonds makes it unsaturated. And if it's unsaturated like that, there is more space in between these fatty acid chains. And because this is the fatty acid chains, fatty acids, fatty acid chains, okay? And the more double bonds you have, so here is one double bond, here is a lot of double bonds. The more double bonds you have, so if you have no double bonds, it will be a solid. And if you have more double bonds, it becomes more liquid at room temperature. If you enjoyed today's lesson, please don't forget to like and subscribe and come join us on the Skool.com community page where you'll find AP Bio blueprints. And if you take a look inside, you will find that Unit 1 is completely free. See you there.